While I certainly would not be considered wealthy by the top 1% of Americans, many of whom are invested in oil and gas, I have always considered myself rich because I have had healthy food and water to drink. Potable water, like oil, is also a shrinking resource. Less than 1% of the world's water supply is drinkable. New York State and the Finger Lakes regions are so blessed with water, it leads one born here to believe everywhere is like this. Yet rainfall levels are not replenishing water tables in many parts of our own country, let alone the world. Exemptions from the Clean Water and Air Act for oil exploration allow oil and gas companies to say they have never had a hazardous waste spill reported. True, because fracking fluid isn't considered hazardous under the statutes. Although if you and I spilled it, we'd be facing millions of dollars in fines and penalties, as the fluid is definitely toxic. We all know, even when the best of intentions, accidents do happen. Consequences of such accidents here, and I'm not talking casing issues, I'm suggesting an unmarked truck hauling brine having an accident anywhere in Tompkins County where water flows to Cayuga Lake, and the drinking water of thousands will be destroyed. Advertising by the industry would lead you to believe there are many public benefits, and the exploration of gas is done with the greatest care at the cheapest, by the cheapest subcontractors they can find. So why do they need exemptions from the very laws established to protect public safety? My cynicism and life experience tells me it's because big business is about big profits and the illusion of shared benefit. Within this very community, we have an opportunity to support real progress with a proposed wind farm that will produce electricity sufficient for much of the community's needs and not harm either the water or air. Diversions are being developed for concerns over migratory birds patterns. As a resident of Enfield, I would ask the board for ban on all industrial development, as it is not keeping with our rural recreation and scenic community, with the support for the windmills, which I consider beautiful and graceful, and have come to dot the areas of the Finger Lakes without damage to the surrounding areas. As I believe you are all and deliberately committed to public safety, and believe that most significant cost to any endeavor has little to do with dollars and cents if there is significant risk to the public, our potable water in this region's most valuable public resource. Big money owns most of federal government at the expense of working men and women who keep this country strong, and we need this board to have the political courage to pass a local law imposing a ban on heavy industry.
Okay, just a reminder, make sure you, for the record, give your name and address.
It's on there.
Marnie Kirch-Gessner, 192 or 191 Enfield Main Road.
Okay. But I'm not wasting
And also, as a reminder, step up to the mic so that we have good records of it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dee Murphy, and I live at 215 Connecticut Hill Road. I want to thank you tonight for your attention on this most important moment in history for Enfield. I'm asking that you pass a bill that will close the town to horizontal fracking. In 1998, we bought what is now Noble House Farm Bed and Breakfast. We bought our dream place for guests to come to retreat, a quiet place to relax, enjoy our 50 acres, while visiting all the wonderful attractions of Ithaca, the state parks, the wildlife preserve, wineries, museum, etc. Now we have hundreds of thousands of people coming to this area for tourism. We have 3 wells on our property, 24 acres of woods and pasture land that we want to continue to develop to bring a real farm experience to travelers. We currently have chickens, berry bushes, and fruit trees, and we farm them organically and use them for our guests. Our land and the tourism it brings is our lifeblood, and that of upstate New York. We've just spent thousands of dollars to refurbish our bed and breakfast. and add renewable, geothermal, and solar power generation to be good stewards of our land and the environment. These are the new technologies which we should be backing. I don't want to lose my business because of the contamination of our wells and aquifers, the breakdown of our roads, and the blight to our countryside from these wells. Remember, the DEC is so concerned about animal waste that it requires farmers to control the waste they put into the soil, and yet the gas companies don't even have to tell us what they are using and what the wastewater coming back to us is doing to us. Do we really have 5 million gallons of water to destroy for each well with the potential of 32 wells per well head, or do we on horizontal drilling? Please pass a law now to assure Enfield remains a peaceful, beautiful, and healthy place to live. Thank you.
I'm David Gould, 1514 Mecklenburg Road, and I have my business there. I own that property. It's called Sunbeam Candles, and we're a solar-powered operation. Almost half of our power comes from solar, and then we purchase wind power through the grid for the rest of it. And I'm just here to basically to also speak for a ban and support that I support a ban, and I hope that you do too. And without knowing a lot of the specific science behind it, just from the press that I've read and the movies I've seen, the risks really outweigh the gains. I tried to make a list of the risks, and I came up with groundwater contamination possibilities, exposure to toxic fumes and chemicals, destruction of roads, ugly gas wells all over the place, property values going down, shooting toxic chemicals into the earth. I mean, it's just obvious that there's a lot to lose. The only thing to gain is for a few individuals, and a ban protects the whole community. That's my basic stance on it. I hope that you can see that as well. That's pretty much it. Thank you. Oh, actually, I'm going to just, since I'm within my 3 minutes still, I like to do this at these kind of things, but can I see a show of hands of people that are against fracking? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Pony Carpenter. I live at 192 Van Dorn Road South. I've lived in Enfield on and off for 24 years. I own 35 acres on Bostwick, and I'm building a new house there where I hope to live for a long time and then pass on to my young daughter. I'm here to ask the board to enact a moratorium on fracking as quickly as possible, and then to continue the conversation on enacting a full ban. If we don't act now, before the state starts issuing permits, we may not have the option to protect ourselves later. We wouldn't let someone burn mountains full of tires in Enfield, and we shouldn't let fracking happen here either. It's true that much of the evidence that fracking is unsafe is anecdotal for now, but for decades the tobacco industry had denied that smoking was dangerous, though the anecdotal evidence was obvious and overwhelming. We're in the same situation with fracking. Not everyone who smokes gets cancer, but that doesn't prove it's safe. This is bad logic, and people that say that fracking is safe by this logic are just plain wrong. Fracking may not completely ruin our town, but the safety technology has definitely not caught up with the drilling technology. We also can't hold the companies accountable later if things go bad. The damage done cannot be undone and could last a very long time. The imminent downsides of fracking include degraded roads, higher taxes for everyone, ruined drinking water, damage to crops, damage to the animals we keep, damage to the animals we hunt, hurting the local tourist industry, and most of all, health impacts on us, our children, and our grandchildren. If we want to have any realistic options for the future, we need to put a moratorium or a ban in place right now. From the legal presentation, we know that there are generous offers of low-cost and free legal services that both help enact legislation and to defend it if needed. Whatever the cost the town does have will be much cheaper than the possible alternatives. Today is my birthday. As a birthday present to myself, I'm pledging $2,000 to the town, which I'm happy to put into escrow immediately with the town attorney to help pay for creating and passing a moratorium or ban and for defending these laws in court if necessary. It's obvious that a large percentage of the voting population of Enfield, whom the board represents, wants the board to act on this as soon as possible. It's hard to understand why they would be reluctant to do so. We can Always remove a moratorium later. The downsides of acting now are small. The downsides of not acting now could be devastating. Gas has been here for millions of years. It's not going anywhere. Let's slow this process down. The state and federal governments are not going to look out for our interests. We need the town government to act. We need someone on the board to be brave enough to make the motion at the meeting. We need the board to follow through with this process and do so immediately. What we, the citizens of Enfield, need to do is to lobby the board at every opportunity to put a moratorium and then a ban in place. We need to do this as a group by showing up at every town board meeting. We need to do this as individuals by contacting our elected representatives directly and frequently and asking for personal meetings with them to lobby them to act immediately. Thank you very much.
First, I'd like to thank the town board for hosting this meeting and listening to the concerns of the people. Next, I'd like to thank all my neighbors who diligently knocked on doors during their free time to gather support against the fracking issue. My name is Mary Rose Savino. I have lived in Enfield since 1989. I own and operate the Bostwick House Bed and Breakfast at 677 Bostwick Road, which is also our home. I am speaking from a tourism point of view. I can't tell you how many visitors stay with us because they consider Enfield a tourism location. If it isn't gathering eggs out of our hen house for breakfast, it's hiking and swimming at Robert Freeman State Park or a leisurely walk on Van Doren Road. Recently, guests from Pennsylvania commented on how wonderful it was to be in this area and not be behind a water truck or hear the constant hum of a compressor. They live in an area that is riddled by fracking. They came to stay with us to get away from what is going on in their community. They came to Ithaca, to Enfield, to sit on the front porch, soak in the majestic views, and enjoy the quiet. Incidentally, every guest that has stayed with us, either from the U.S. or abroad, has commented on the natural beauty here, so let's keep it that way. What can we do? We must do everything we possibly can to keep in touch with our elected officials before the governor signs this into a bill. Last week, I went to meet with Senator Mike Nozzolio to make him aware of our situation and this meeting tonight. I will be following up with his office tomorrow. I strongly urge the town of Enfield to place a ban on fracking. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll be emailing you.
Good evening. My name is Henry Hanstein. I live at 382 South Van Doren Road. I've been there for about 30 years. And frankly, I'm shocked that fracking is even being considered in this area, given the sensitivity of the streams. I'm surprised that fracking is even being considered in this area, considered the density of the population, the natural resources, the beauty, the tourism, and the hills. Even if by some miracle these frackers could extract the gas without pollution that they've created in so many other areas, we've got 1,000 trucks per well. Just imagine these trucks going up and down these hills, crawling on the way up, maybe speeding on the way down, maybe losing their brakes, totally destroy our way of life, even if they didn't pollute the water, which they have done in so many other places. They have a proven record of polluting wells and water. And there is no shortage of natural gas, and my understanding is that this gas will be exported for profit, not used to get energy independence from oil. So, and there's no hurry to get this out of the ground. Probably technology will change where they can get it out of the ground without the risk that they have now. And I was at a meeting earlier where there were attorneys present, and they said that we are well within our legal rights to ban fracking at the local level under the Home Rule Law. We may be sued, but if we are, we will win, and I would also be willing to contribute to the legal costs as a previous speaker. And I would save money if gas was cheaper. I own rental properties that pay a lot of gas bills, but I don't want to save money. I want to save the natural beauty of this area and the quality of life. And I strongly encourage you all to pass a ban and join your people in the town of Dryden. And I have purchased 5 copies of Gasland, and I was hoping that each of the members would watch this documentary before they make up their mind on whether to pass this ban. And as I say, in Bradford County, people who used to do a 20-minute commute, it's now over an hour. And I want to build a house. I have a house plans. An architect An architect has already drawn up the plans, and I won't build this house if fracking is going to go through because I'm concerned about property values plummeting. So that's another thing to consider when you decide on the ban. And if I could, I'd like to give you these discs.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Bonnie Griffin. I live at 253 Iredell Road. I've been there for 25 years. My husband has lived in town all his life. I would ask the board, please, to pass a moratorium ASAP and take whatever steps are necessary to get the ban underway, the law, the land use law for Enfield, according to the two lawyers who were here earlier this month. I have an article from a woman whose name is Shelley Stark. She's a local research consultant and editor for the Athens News in Ohio. It's a list of pros and cons for hydrofracking. The pros are few. The cons are numerous. I'll give this to the board. I won't read all of it, but I just want to read a little bit of what she wants to say. Pros: U.S. energy production. However, foreign companies are buying leases. The gas will be sold on the international market to the highest bidder. Short-term jobs for a few local people. Short-term increased customers for local businesses. Profit for a few landowners. Profit for a few mineral right owners. And now the cons. Loss of property value. Loss of county property tax revenues. Greatly increased traffic and accidents. Increased road damage from large trucks. Increased need to repair roads with your tax dollars, which to do, repair roads or cut school budgets. Destruction of the peaceful enjoyment of our homes. Risks to mortgages and property insurances. Banks have refused to issue mortgages on properties where fracking leases have been sold. Lenders have claimed breach of contract when leases have been sold. Insurance companies have refused to cover land and structures. Loss of viable economic base, loss of tourism, agriculture, tax base loss through property devaluation, and people moving away, infrastructure deterioration, poisoned drinking water supplies, disease-causing chemicals. 93% of identified chemicals are dangerous, 25% cancer, 35% endocrine disruptors, 52% neurotoxins. Radioactive waste. Ohio currently allows the radioactive toxic chemical liquid from fracking operations to be sprayed on their roads. Accidental spills and criminal dumping documented in every state and Canada with fracking operations. So I'll give this to the board. I won't read the rest. The rest of it, another whole page, is cons against fracking. So please do what you can to protect our town. Water is already scarce. We're on our second well where we live. Every time another house goes up, we get less water. We may have to drill deeper just to get water. Thank you very much.
I'm Rob Sullivan of 68 North Van Dorn Road. I'm a member of NSAW. I believe that we have a really small window of opportunity here to do the right thing. If the people in Dish, Texas, or Dimmock, Pennsylvania could have been where we were tonight a few years ago, things would be a lot different in those two towns. And unfortunately, they didn't take the time to ban it, and they reaped the harvest of what happened to their towns, which you'll see in Gasland. You have the opportunity tonight and in the coming months to do the right thing. I'd like you to remember what your mothers and your fathers taught you when you were young. It's very important to play nice. Thank you.
I'm Philip White from 348 South Applegate Road, where my wife and I have lived for 53 years at this point, hopefully several more. I guess a lot of these people have expressed the things that I have to express also. I think gas extraction will come somehow eventually. We've got to protect ourselves in some manner. And from what I understand from the attorneys that we had, we can get a moratorium in place for in the vicinity of $100,000 to $150,000. And that kind of money, if you speak with your highway superintendent, we'll tell you that that's not going to build a lot of road. I would wager that'll build less than 1 mile of road. And I also mentioned that, I guess the last time I spoke, my wife and I had been in the Dakotas and seen some of this truck traffic, and it literally turns some blacktop roads into mush, portions of them. They just unbelievable what they do and carry on with them. The cost of the roads is unbelievable. I can't imagine what property values will go to if you don't have your own well and water. They bring in these water buffaloes when the gas companies' feet are held to the fire. They put these ugly things in your front yard. Anybody that delivers water to you will probably not bring you anything other than chlorinated water or prepared water in some manner. It seems to me like a no-brainer that we really need a moratorium to see where we can go, what we can stand with, go from there. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name's Stephanie Haskins. I live at 431 Enfield Center Road. I've been a resident of Enfield for almost 10 years. I live on a really beautiful piece of land that's been in my partner's family for almost 50 years. I don't know if I can really adequately express how deeply rooted we are on the land and in our home. It's a place where our youngest child was born, where we grow our own food, our children play. We look forward to all of the seasons there. We're very intimately connected to the life around us. It's also a place that holds almost 5 decades of family memories. It's not a home that could ever be adequately replaced should we be forced to move. We're gravely concerned about the possibility of hydrofracking happening in Enfield. We've done extensive reading and inquiry about the impacts of hydrofracking and are convinced that to allow this type of drilling to happen in Enfield would be inviting the sure destruction of our community. There have been countless heartbreaking stories from families in Pennsylvania who've experienced the destruction of their farms and livelihoods due to hydrofracking. The plain truth is that gas companies really don't care about anything but making a profit. They'll lie and cheat their way onto our land to glean the greatest profit from it and not care at all if our water is poisoned, our crops ruined, our animals killed, our roads ravaged, and our way of life destroyed. Enfield's a community made up primarily of working-class families. A few people stand to reap great financial gain from leasing their land to the gas companies, but the rest of us really will lose quite a bit. Independent studies have shown that towns that have allowed hydrofracking have less economic growth than those that have not allowed hydrofracking to happen. For those of us who have chosen not to lease our land, I feel like we've been put at the mercy of our neighbors' decisions. Air, noise, soil, and water pollution do not obey property boundaries. Most of us cannot afford continual water testing to ensure that our drinking water is safe. Most of us cannot afford to lose time from work due to sickness. None of us want to see any of our children become ill from a known toxic threat that we can avoid now. I would just close by really respectfully asking the board to enact a ban as soon as possible. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Kristen Lovelace Ross, 56 Waterburg Road. I'm going to have to read very fast. I love this land. I expect most of you love this land. My grandparents lived here, my father was born here, and after years of visiting, I returned to live out my life on part of the peaceful old dairy farm. Fracking will destroy this land, poison the air and water for everyone. It won't stop at the boundaries of the people who have chosen to lease and make money. It will force many of us to leave the land we love, many in poverty because our land values will plummet, because of noise and air pollution and maybe wells turned poisonous. We may lose much of the life and livelihood of the area if any of the Finger Lakes end up dead and poisoned. Estimates from other sources are that many of the gains, financial gains and jobs will last for up to 10 years, but then we'll be left with a barren, destroyed landscape unlivable for many years. Imagine the dead coal towns and the landscapes destroyed by strip mining and mountaintop mining. Imagine something like that here. Imagine the landscape we love, the beautiful place we've chosen to live. We cannot allow gigantic corporations with no concern for the welfare of Enfield or New York to come here and make an ugly ruin of the landscape we love. They will give us nothing, care nothing, once they have raped the land of the resources that will make them even richer. And most of us, not only poorer, but left with a wasteland to live in. We deserve better. We cannot let ourselves be manipulated by greed. We must stand up for a sustainable Enfield, a sustainable New York. As someone else already said, the oil will still be here. We should wait until there's a way to extract it safely. So I ask you, in Enfield, let's have a ban on horizontal hydrofracking now, before the state starts issuing permits. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jeff Klaus, and I live at 632 Bostwick Road. I am here to urge that you enact a ban also. As context for some of the remarks I'd like to make, I'd like to say that I grew up in a small rural town in Illinois, part of a farm family there, and I have a very deep respect for rural life and the challenges that it often brings for making a living. My wife and I have lived in Enfield for 16 years and rural Tompkins County for 32 years, and we really love living here. We're deeply concerned that what we love about this place and our neighbors here and the life we've built here will be lost if we allow hydrofracturing. We're especially concerned about the negative health and environmental consequences for all of us if hydrofracturing occurs. And while some people have noted that there isn't much scientific evidence, I have a list of links to sources that I'll give you, and I'll send them to you electronically so you can just click on them and read them, of scientific studies and verifiable reports of seriously negative health consequences. Let me say just a couple of things about that, and then I'll give you my whole sheet. The toxic pollution of water, air, and soil associated with hydrofracking represents a very serious health and environmental hazard. There are verified cases of well and aquifer contamination, of the poisoning of children, adults, pets, and farm animals, and of the long-term contamination of soil and streams. While gas drilling companies refute this, the evidence is growing and it's very distressing. There is evidence of the toxic chemicals used in hydrofracking migrating into groundwater, aquifers, and wells due to the unpredictable shattering of the shale and leaks in both well casings and the storage ponds that hold fracking wastewater. There's also evidence that the gases emitted by compressor stations, wastewater ponds, and the regular flaring of wells are creating toxic air pollution with serious health consequences for both humans and animals. Farm animals have developed neurological problems so bad that they've had to be put down. Family pets have died, and people have experienced very serious respiratory, neurological, and immune system problems. There are documented cases of people getting very sick and having to keep their children indoors to avoid toxic air from nearby drilling and compressor operations. There are people who can't drink the water from their wells or take a shower in their houses, and people's wells have been contaminated over a mile away from some drill sites. The air quality in parts of Wyoming, where there's a lot of drilling, is now worse than in Los Angeles. Breast cancer rates in Texas counties with gas drilling are on the rise, while in other counties in the state they're declining. Even the president of the Marcellus Shale Coalition, which represents natural gas companies, has said that the group now believes, on the basis of scientific evidence, that natural gas exploration in Pennsylvania is partly responsible for rising levels of contaminants found there in the drinking water where there's a lot of drilling. And I'll just give you the rest of my sheet.
Hi, my name is Asa Redmond. I live at 184 North Applegate Road. My wife and I grew up in Tompkins County, but we've been Enfield residents for over 7 years and plan to live here for the rest of our lives. I'm also a local business owner, Regional Access, a natural foods distribution company, and my wife and I also own a small family farm here in Enfield. My wife and I have 3 small children, including a 3-month-old baby, who are all here tonight. We strongly feel that clean water is by far our most important natural resource. The hydrofracking issue, I believe, is the most important issue of our lifetime. This is a legacy we will leave our children. My whole family, including the kids, petitioned for the fracking ban, and the response was overwhelmingly anti-fracking. Almost every person signed our petition and thanked us for spending our Saturdays doing the petitioning. Everyone who signed this petition said that they expect the board to take action on this very important issue. We need to stop this from happening for our children and their children. Fast forward 30 years to a hypothetical scenario that I will do everything I can to keep from happening. If we do allow fracking and the companies come in and destroy the water table and aquifers in the name of natural gas extraction, our land and water tables will be decimated just like has already been done in Pennsylvania and Wyoming. When my kids and our animals have no clean water to drink as an inevitable result of this process, there will be a much more difficult problem for our kids to solve than our current perceived need for more natural gas. Oil and energy companies have big money, which they are currently pouring into lobbying this issue in huge amounts. During the Bush-Cheney administration, fracking companies were exempted from the Clean Air and Water Act. Cheney was the CEO of Halliburton, the company who developed the hydrofracking method, before becoming vice president, so it is no coincidence that this method was exempted. If that isn't a conflict of interest, I don't know what is. The recent Supreme Court decision allowing basically unlimited campaign donations by corporations has greatly increased what the oil companies can contribute to political candidates, and they are taking advantage of that. And the states that are in difficult economic times, such as New York, trying to balance our budget. Oil companies want to make money, and despite what they might say about how they can do hydrofracking safely, they cannot. And they really don't care about the environment at all, just money. If they did, they would have found a way to get this natural gas that has been down there for millions of years and isn't going anywhere without needing to be exempted from the Clean Air and Water Act.
30 seconds.
Therefore, I again implore the Enfield Board to immediately begin the process of enacting not just a moratorium, but an outright ban on the hydrofracking extraction method in the town of Enfield. This is the point at which people need to do their part by being a part of the democratic system. The only power that us small-town folks have against the big money and political influence of the energy companies is our power to vote. I'm not trying to threaten politicians or candidates, but I do want to give fair warning so that they know that their actions and position on this issue are so important that I expect a majority of the votes in the next election will be based on their actions or inaction related to the outcome on this issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Debbie. How you doing? It's good to see you smiling. So I'm here to speak on behalf of Sapsquatch Pure Maple Syrup, located at 2247 Mecklenburg Road.
Name, please.
Josh Dolan, owner and head sugar maker. Sapsquatch is a small maple operation with 400 taps. We produce 75 to 100 gallons a year. Our specialty is our focus on education and ecotourism. We also operate a diversified forest farm and produce other products such as ramps, aka wild leeks, mushroom logs, as well as sustainable wood products. I'm young and ambitious, and my business is ready to grow. If God willing, I'll be at it for another 50 years, as long as my back holds out. There's a huge maple shortage, and Canada has actually had to tap their strategic maple reserve. The time is ripe for maple syrup to revive, and Enfield could be a hub of production in the southern tier. Only 2% of our tappable maples in New York State are currently under production. Here is a real economic opportunity. How is it that my business that helps sustain families, improves forests, generates tourism, educates young people on a variety of valuable skills is less valued than the gas industry, an industry with a track record of worker safety violations, economic crimes, destroyed roads, and destroyed local economies, and a history of deception that preys on communities in order to gain access to land leases. This is an industry that is so bad that it has had to be exempted by the Halliburton loophole from the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, and the Community Right to Know Act, among others. This is an industry that is so unsustainable that, in fact, if the vast subsidies provided by the federal government were removed, it would cease to exist. And so we are at a crossroads. Does Enfield want to sell its soul to a corrupt and dangerous industry? Or does Enfield want to blaze new territory, find creative solutions to economic issues that support small family farms and forestry, and bring new visitors to this community to enjoy the great wealth of natural beauty and ecological industry to be found here. This is a decision of a lifetime that will affect many future generations. Before you make it, I suggest you visit some of the communities in Pennsylvania that have been affected. The last thing I'd like to say is tap maples, not Marcellus.
My name is Marcy Finlay. I live at 277 Enfield Main Road, and I also would encourage the town to put a ban in place, but I would submit that that's only a first step, and there are several other things that need to be done to truly protect our town from the negative effects of hydraulic fracturing, and in particular to look at the effects of drilling that may not be happening in Enfield but in neighboring communities, and those two concerns in my mind are protection of our aquifer and control of traffic, not only on local roads, but anything we may be able to do on our state highways, including 327 that goes right in front of this school. And in particular, with regard to the aquifer, which as many of you may know, there's an aquifer that underlies much of the center part of Enfield and follows 327 down towards Treman, and many of us use that as our source of water. And one of my concerns is that the gas companies may see that as a source of water. And with no aquifer protection law in place and no limitations on withdrawals, I don't believe there's anything that would prevent a gas company from buying a few acres, putting a huge well in, and taking millions of gallons out of our aquifer, with the town left with no ability to control it, be compensated, or protect the current users. So I would ask the town to immediately put a prohibition in place on industrial level withdrawals from our aquifer, and a moratorium in place to allow time for an aquifer study and eventually an aquifer protection law, and at the same time to look into what the town can do about through traffic that may significantly affect our community, not only on town roads but as state highways as well. And I thank you for your time and consideration.
My name is Janice Carson. I live at 61 Rothermich Road. I've lived here for 44 decades, and that makes me a relative newcomer to this area because I know that there are over 4 generations of folks up along my road. Zoning is, and there are other methods to control development of land. There are reasonable land uses that don't interfere with their neighbors' rights. Some places have passed right to farm laws to protect the right to farm. There are other laws that prohibit how many junk cars you can have on your land. These are all balanced approaches to land development. Because of corporate greed and the failure of government at the federal, state, and county level, you folks are our last line of defense. And I hope that you will enact a moratorium and take other steps to make sure that if there ever is development of this hydrofracking or other methods, that it will be done in a safe way that does not pass along costs to taxpayers and individual homeowners. Even if everything went perfectly with this process, there are unreimbursed costs to taxpayers for road damage, unreimbursed losses to property owners if you try to sell. Potential buyers will have difficulty obtaining mortgages if there are wells on adjacent lands. And if you attempt to refinance your own home, you may run into problems. Law basically just comes down to money, and my lawyer can beat up your lawyer. As a minimum, you need to enact a mandatory cash bond and sufficient insurance before any work begins that will allow for the replacement of all the wells in this area with a municipal water supply. And all you have to do is look at the Louisiana and Gulf Coast to see where defective parts were deliberately installed and the mess that was necessary to clean up and may never be cleaned up.
30 seconds.
Nobody ever had to clean up toxic waste from a wind farm or a solar generator. I propose that the long-term cost of inaction now will far exceed the cost of any near-term lawsuits, and the corporations will go after the low-hanging fruit. Just make sure we aren't low-hanging fruit, please.
Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to address you. I'm Dr. Charlie Elrod, a 15-year resident of Springfield Farm at 101 Rockwell Road. I hope to be on that farm and an engaged citizen of Enfield for the next 40 or 50 years. I brought with me tonight a picture of our home. In it, you can see the Bach family of the 1860s arrayed around the front yard and the porch. I'm immensely proud that Bob and Beattie Bach entrusted the stewardship of their farm and this heritage to us. To me, it evokes everything of enduring quality and value in our rural lifestyle here in Enfield. That quiet rural lifestyle is why we moved to Enfield. It is here that we chose to raise our 2 daughters. It's here that our 5-year-old grandson helps us unload wagons of hay, which we buy from another Enfield farmer. This farm will one day be his to carry on with, as have the generations before us. However, our grandson's future on the farm, this lifestyle, and this heritage, the very reason that many of us in this room came to Enfield, will end if we do not ban the heavy industrialization of our town. Now, on a more dispassionate scientific level, I'll offer as credentials that I have a PhD in animal science from Cornell University. Today, I provide technical support and conduct research on animal health across 6 continents around the world. Over the last 20 years, I've developed an expertise in water quality for livestock. One of the first slides that I always use to help people understand why their water has the quality it does is a geologic map of the bedrock underlying their region. From that map, I can pretty well tell you what the quality of their water will be. I'll tell you unequivocally that if you force millions of gallons of brine laced with toxic chemicals and known carcinogens under very high pressure into the bedrock underlying our farms, our aquifer, our town, you will be drinking that fracking fluid. The deeper you go into the bedrock, the denser it becomes. So the path of least resistance is always up. That is where the benzene, toluene, 2-butoxyethanol, and the methane will go, up into the wells of the Enfield citizens, up into their kitchen faucets and showers, sprinkled on their vegetable gardens, and filling their kids' wading pools.
30 seconds.
Up into their bloodstreams, brains, livers, and kidneys. You do not want to assume the responsibility for such outcomes. You are the only ones with the authority to stop this nightmare from happening in Enfield. The people of Enfield have entrusted you to make the right decisions that will affect our heritage, our livelihoods, and our health. The only responsible decision is to ban hydrofracking in the town of Enfield. Thank you very much.
Karen Pincus, 635 Iredell Road. I'm a professor at Cornell University, and I teach about and research about climate change. If I believed for 1 minute that so-called natural gas would reduce greenhouse gas emissions if burned in lieu of other fuels, then I might possibly support fracking as a way towards a greater good for the rest of the country or the rest of the world. The fact of the matter is natural gas is not a patriotic or a clean fuel, contrary to the television commercials that we're being subjected to on a daily basis. There's a glut of natural gas in this country, so it's very likely that the oil companies that want to drill here are going to export the gas elsewhere and increase greenhouse gas emissions through the transport mechanisms that they'll use to do so. There's no reason that we need natural gas, and the economic benefits, if any, would be very, very short-lived, as all the studies have shown. Please enact a ban as soon as possible. Thank you.
Ban it.
My name is Marnie Lieberman, and I live at 315 Sheffield Road. I recently moved here from Caroline, where I've been farming since 2006 organically. I'd like to ask that you please enact a ban, pass a moratorium, uphold a ban permanently. Tompkins County could become precedent for the world regarding banning hydrofracking forever and permanently. Humans have creative, brilliant minds. The brilliant minds that developed hydrofracking can be turned towards creative, safe, and sustainable ways of developing energy. At one point in time in history, slavery was considered a good idea, as was in pre-World War II Germany. Nazi activity was considered a good idea. Gas corporations are playing on the feeling of desperation for quick jobs. And gas companies want people to believe that hydrofracking is inevitable, but nothing is inevitable. We always have a choice. Certain things are absolutely irreplaceable: water, natural beauty, the dark skies, animals, and quiet. I'd like to quote His Holiness the Dalai Lama on universal responsibility. We share a sense of universal responsibility for both humankind and nature. The survival of life on Earth as we know it is threatened by human activities that lack a commitment to nonviolence and humanitarian values. The environment, the source of life for all beings in the world, continues to undergo extensive degeneration, and this destruction of nature and the Earth's natural resources results from ignorance, greed, and lack of respect for the Earth's living things. This lack of respect extends even to the Earth's humans' descendants. These future generations will inherit a vastly degraded planet if destruction of the natural environment continues at the present rate. Our ancestors viewed the earth as rich and bountiful, which it is. Many people in the past also saw nature as inexhaustibly sustainable, which we know is the case, but only if we care for it. We must consider future generations. A clean environment is a human right like any other. And I would add it's an all beings right. If we exploit the environment in extreme ways, even though we may get some money or other benefit from it now, in the long run, we ourselves will suffer, and future generations will suffer.
30 seconds.
It is therefore part of our responsibility towards others to ensure that the world we pass on is as healthy as we found it, if not healthier. Yes, one individual can change the world. Large human movements spring from individual human efforts. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Margaret Bold. I live in the Stone House on Stonehouse Road. Over the summer, a man named David Bolander visited Ithaca and spoke informally about his personal experiences with hydrofracking. Mr. Bolander is an accountant and consultant in Wyalusing, and he farms land that has been in his family for well over a century. Here are some of his comments. Quote, "The well for the barn and original farmhouse was so contaminated with methane they thought it would explode. So the well pump was disconnected for 6 months and water was trucked in by the gas companies for the animals. 3 times they threatened that they were going to stop trucking in water for the cows unless we agreed to things. These things included non-disclosure agreements and consent not to sue. The operations end up being more extensive than anticipated. Most all the neighbors were told that the gas wells would be drilled, it would take 3 months or so, and then land would be restored to its earlier state. In reality, this is what happens. They excavate a pad, obliterating the natural terrain, hauling in hundreds of trucks of stone, gravel, etc. Once the pad is completed, they only drill 2 to 4 actual gas wells, of what ultimately are going to be 12 or so on that pad. They may not frack the drilled wells immediately, but wait sometimes a year. The intention is to refrack over and over the same drilled wells, sometimes for decades. If the well pad is 10 acres, 20% of our surface land will be a perpetual well pad. They power huge lights that light up the pads for the whole night. They don't use street electric, but generators that contribute to the noise. The trucks have large pumps that require large motors. The trucks endlessly are using their backup beepers, horns for instructions to the ground crew, etc. The 3 sites in our neighborhood will generate 1,600 truck trips per day. The gas drilling, when it goes on, makes it almost impossible to sleep. Our road was destroyed initially and impassable. The gas companies then closed 10-mile stretches of road for months at a time as they began rebuilding it. The public does not have any idea how bad the permanent environmental contamination is going to be. There has been barium and radiation poisoning already. One not far from us is a 13-year-old girl with barium poisoning. One of our immediate neighbor's daughters is having clumps of hair fall out. His dog got sick and his parakeet died from drinking his well water.
30 seconds.
As you may know, gas drilling is exempt from the Clean Water Act. The residents of Enfield have the right to expect Enfield's elected officials to do everything in their power to protect our air, land, water, health, roads, and property values. It is essential to ban gas drilling as soon as possible.
He thinks I'm a giant. Good evening. My name is Ellen Grady, and I live at 133 Sheffield Road on the Ithaca side of Sheffield Road. But I come to you tonight because we drink from our well. We have a well at our house, and I know that our well could be affected, and that what you do in Enfield across the street from our house will affect us as on the Ithaca side of the road. And so I'm asking you to ban fracking in the town of Enfield. I have many concerns, and I think so many people have eloquently spoken to those concerns already tonight. And but I'll just say one of those my main concern is about the process of hydrofracking is the effect it will have on our health and the health of this community. We know that the chemicals used in the process are highly toxic and carcinogenic. And we know, just to name a few of those chemicals, benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, xylene, and that those chemicals are also endocrine disruptors. And, I put my notes together just a few minutes before I came. In addition to the chemicals used in the fracking, that the wastewater that is a byproduct of the drilling process picks up salts, naturally occurring radioactive material, barium, magnesium, and various other volatile organic compounds, which are also carcinogenic. We need more cancer-causing chemicals released into our environment, like we need a hole in the head. When I was born in 1962, 1 in 32 women developed breast cancer. Now it's 1 in 8, except if you live in an industrial area or an area where there's a lot of toxics. Then it's 1 in 7 women. You know how many of us will develop breast cancer? And that's just breast cancer. And as a mother of 4 daughters, these numbers scare me. If hydrofracking goes forward in this community, our water and our air will have no protection. Our children will have no protection. If hydrofracking is so safe, as the industry claims, why did the industry work so hard to make it exempt from the Clean Water, the Safe Drinking Water Act. Please don't let this process pollute our community. Our children are counting on us. They're counting on you to protect them. Thank you.
My name is Arnold Bradshaw, and I live on Enfield Center Road. It's basically downtown Enfield. And even though I live in downtown Enfield, I'm surrounded by wooded hills, hayfields, and peace and quiet. My children are the sixth generation of my family to live in this region, and we have continued to live here for the simple reason that we love this part of the world. I don't make a lot of money, and life is often a struggle here, especially with the 6-month winters we have. But I feel that we are among the most fortunate people on the planet. Truly, we breathe clean air, have beautiful scenery almost everywhere we look, and in my case at least, I am surrounded by considerate, intelligent family, friends, and neighbors. I'm also able to drink fresh, clean water that comes up from under my ground. Right now, 864 million people in the world have no access to clean, uncontaminated water. That's almost 2.5 times the entire population of the United States. 20% of the world's fresh water flows over Niagara Falls. For the United States, for North America, that's 95% of North America's fresh water. We are basically the world's freshwater billionaires. Also, worldwide demand for fresh water doubles every 21 years. Our water becomes more valuable as it becomes scarcer. We are already rich, far richer than the 30 pieces of silver the gas companies are offering us to portray our miraculous resource. It would be criminal to allow this drilling practice into our midst. Natural gas represents a short-sighted dependence that will enrich only the very few at the incalculable expense to the rest of us. Hydrofracking is a dirty and dangerous procedure that we must not allow to enter Enfield, Tompkins County, New York State, or anywhere else. Natural gas can run out and life will continue. Clean water disappears and life itself will cease to exist. We implore the Enfield Council to adopt a full ban on hydrofracking. It is their duty and it is their responsibility. Thank you.
My name is Robert Hones. I live at 2504 State Route 79 in Trumansburg. I have come to Enfield from Long Island, and I now live in my family's ancestral home of over 150 years. And I want my kids to be able to call this home many, many years from now. If this area becomes an industrial waste pit, it would be New York State's loss, and it would be our loss. On Long Island, you cannot drink the water. Friends that come up to visit are always amazed that you can actually drink the water from the ground. It's something that's almost forgotten once you leave this area. I do not want horizontal or even vertical fracking in Enfield or New York State. It's irresponsible, and our community does not have the manpower to police it correctly. If farms are allowed to have fracking wells, such farms should lose their tax-exempt status, and any property that has a well apparatus, supply chain material should be taxed at an industrial tax rate, not at a disadvantaged business rate. Whether it's 5 acres or multi-wells, and we're talking 20 acres, our town and state will need the funds. Additionally, I feel any residents with fracking wells should no longer qualify for star exemption, and a portion of their property with drilling apparatus should be taxed at the prevailing corporate rate and not at a residential rate. A few sticks to go along with the carrots could change people from deciding to sign the leases if they think that it's not just money coming in, that they're going to have to pay more in taxes. And that might change a couple of ways of going about this. So, thank you.
I see there are a number of folks standing. If you're in line, fine, but if not, there's plenty of open seats up here in the front. Thanks. Go ahead.
Hi. Name is Tor Oshner. I live on 1045 Trumbull's Corners Road in Newfield, actually. I was requested by the Bach family to come and speak to you. I have a 650-acre organic farm. I farm quite a bit of land here in Enfield. Our household income is 100% farm. I'm not a part-timer. I do this for a living. I was talking to him the other day. We were combining corn over on his property, and we're talking about this issue, and I told him a story that what's already happened to our farm is we have a flour mill in Trumansburg. We grind 6 tons a week, ship it all over the state. I'm trying to revive milling in New York State. Newfield used to be a big milling center. We're shipping to Whole Foods and the Park Slope Co-op, which is the largest food co-op in the whole country. And those two companies have already told us that they're not going to be buying products that are produced in these areas where they're hydrofracking. So I'm feeling like my livelihood is on the line here. I'm not going to come here and tell you guys what to do because it's Enfield's decision. But I could be pretty heavily negatively impacted by this. Another thing is, since we're certified organic, our certifiers are also looking at whether they're going to keep farmland in these areas certified. So we've already started to look at some farms in other areas, and we were going to build our new mill at the farm in Newfield, and now I've decided against that. So I think, these sort of impacts are things you should look at. Is that the kind of industry you want? Sustainable, local jobs. We would have added a bunch of people. I'm also part owner of a bakery over on Buck Hill Road, where we put jobs on there. Is that bakery going to survive this? So, I'm not. Everybody's talked very well about what the negative impacts to our environment are, but I think this could have a negative impact on agriculture in this area and just the way of life. Do you want working farms in this area? That's what I have to say.
Hi there. My name is Martha Fisher. I live at 772 Bostwick Road. And I've been reading about hydrofracking and so on for the last 3 years or so. I grew up in rural Ohio. I've lived in a rural community pretty much most of my life. And when I started reading about things, I was aware of this real passionate feeling that you've heard from several people. I feel strongly about, I want my passion to be couched in facts. And so I thought, well, what are the chemicals that are worrying us so much in this hydrofracturing process? And so I started learning about manufacturer safety data sheets. They're short for MSDS. You all probably know about them. They were new to me, but I looked for a list of chemicals that are used in hydrofracking. There's one compound called activator. It's capital A, C, and then capital T, IVATOR. I don't know, it's a fancy name for a clear liquid that the MSDS says smells mildly of alcohol. One of the chemicals that's in this compound is methanol. In fact, if you go to an industry website called FracFocus, that's spelled FRACFOCUS, fracfocus.org, you'll find that methanol is used in several frequently used compounds in hydrofracking. So I read on in the MSDS under hazard, it says, warning, flammable liquid may form explosive mixtures with air. It has a health rating of 3, which is serious, a health hazard rating. Potential health effects, immediate hazards, harmful if swallowed, harmful if inhaled, harmful if absorbed through skin, causes chemical burns to eyes. Delayed hazards include possible reproductive disorders, may cause lung damage, etc. It is a carcinogen to humans. Then I kept reading down the list of categories of information, toxicology, etc., and came to number 12, which is ecological information. And you know what they had listed there for ecological information? I quote, "not determined."
30 seconds.
So we're thinking about putting this stuff in the ground in Enfield. I read about the precautionary principle that says when an activity raises threats of harm to the environment or human health, precautionary measures should be taken even if some cause and effect relationships are not fully established scientifically. I hope that you'll institute a ban or at least a moratorium here in Enfield. There's a ton of information out there, and I, for one, offer as much help as you need. I've got eyeballs, I've got reading. You need lots of help, and I would love to be of assistance. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Carolyn McMaster. I live at 36 Griffin Road, and I'm very honored to be the steward of about 30 acres of beautiful, pristine forest. And I own the Briar Patch Veterinary Hospital down on Route 13 in the town of Ithaca. I've lived all over this county. I've lived in Lansing. I've lived in Cayuga Heights. I've lived on the Cornell campus many years ago. I've lived in Ulysses, and now I live in Enfield. And only in Enfield is the water as so pristine I can drink it out of my tap. It really is the most wonderful water I've ever had anywhere, and I just dread losing that. It is a precious, precious resource and something we in Enfield can be very, very proud of. I didn't come here with prepared comments, but I wanted to add my voice because I think this is such an incredibly important issue. And I urge you, council members, to not waste time with a moratorium. I truly believe, as the speakers a couple weeks ago seemed to stress, a moratorium is only delaying the inevitable. I mean, it's a good idea if you can't pass a ban, but the longer a moratorium is in place, the weaker it becomes, from what I understood from the lawyers that spoke. And we have to stop the leasing, and we have to stop it as soon as possible. And I don't think a moratorium will necessarily do that, but a ban might. Water is scarce all over the world, as many of us up here have mentioned. It may not be scarce right here in this township, although maybe it is, but it's going to be scarce as the years go by, and a lot of water goes into fracking, more than you can even imagine, just to put the stuff down into the ground. And so many people have eloquently spoken on how horrible the side effects of that being released into our environment will be. So please, I don't feel it is fair to endanger our environment, our water, indeed our lives in Enfield, so a few neighbors and the gas company can get rich. Thank you.
My name is Robert Lynch. I live at 175 Gray Road. I have lived at that residence since 1969. I am also the employee of a small Enfield business, and I've been at that job for 24 years now. I love this town. I appreciate the comments of my neighbors who are, judging by the comments tonight, almost unanimous in favor of a ban or a moratorium on hydrofracking. I take a somewhat different position on it. I am not supportive of hydrofracking, but on the other hand, I am not ready to say I'm necessarily opposed to it. I keep an open mind. I stay neutral. And I urge the Enfield Town Board to do as well. I don't want this town to be going down the same path that Dryden has gone down. All it's brought them is a long, protracted, and probably expensive lawsuit. Enfield is a small town with a limited tax base. I think it is better that the town let the state of New York regulate hydrofracking, hopefully regulate it effectively. And then, once we find out what the state is going to do, then if the Enfield Town Board decides something needs to be done, action can be taken. I have no personal gain to be made by having hydrofracking in Enfield. My lot is a wooded lot of only about 3 acres. Like Dr. McMaster, I am concerned about the water quality. I know the water is some of the best that I have ever tasted. And I am concerned about that, but I hope with intelligent regulation by the state, we can move ahead and avoid a large, expensive lawsuit that ties up the town and its resources for many, many years. I know that the comments tonight, judging from the comments tonight, there is a disproportionate opposition to hydrofracturing, and I respect that, and I respect my neighbors' opinions. However, I also urge the town board to listen to the property owners in the town of Enfield who may have limited opportunities to use their land, and to take everybody's concern into consideration. I know you'll make an intelligent choice. Thank you.
My name is Eric Feinstein. I live at 214 Van Ostrin Road. My wife and I have lived there since 2007. It's our first house that we bought there. We plan to stay there for the rest of our lives, hopefully. We both came from New York City. I actually grew up in Ithaca, but we returned here in 2002. We greatly enjoy and value the peace and quiet, the beauty, and the feelings of safety that we have here. One of the things that I do, aside from making music, that's mainly what I do, I also write poetry every day, every night actually. And I write that poetry in a very peaceful and quiet and naturally dark setting. The idea, the thought of having this kind of light pollution and compressors running, not to mention the thought of the damage to the water, is a horrifying prospect to me. And this is what just occurred. This is the phrase that keeps coming back to me as I think about this issue tonight. This is the phrase: permanent damage. Permanent damage. Permanent damage. Permanent damage. Permanent damage. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Dan Flurledge. I live at 881 Bostwick. Been there for a little over 25 years. I changed my position in this line about half an hour ago based on listening, which is what we're here for. I was fascinated by what people had to say, the degree to which they were informed, the connection that their information had to their hearts and their minds. And I wanted to listen more before I spoke. And as I listened, what started to emerge for me more than anything, I kind of tossed what I was going to say for the most part, was this idea of time. And it made me think of a teeny little quote that I did come with. Not long ago, I got to be part of a very large packed house listening to a guy named Andy Revkin. Some of you may have, that name may sound familiar. He's a journalist. He's an award-winning journalist with the New York Times. He's written for them since 1995. He's been in the Science Times since 2000. And he was the go-to guy when it came to writing about climate change. And at this particular presentation, he shared his career, how he got started, with whom he worked, his travels around the globe. It was fascinating. It was also terrifying. After about 3/4 of an hour, he had this to say. It's taken me years to realize that all of the political dialogue and debate concerning global warming, all of the ongoing corporate decision-making behind closed doors, all of the international efforts to effectively embrace these issues actually have very little to do with our climate. It was weird. Most everybody in the room thought that he had misspoken. And he let that feeling ride for almost a full minute. And then he said, turns out it really isn't about our climate at all. It's about the climate of our children and our grandchildren. And in that room with 2,000 people, you could have heard literally a pin drop. And as I listen tonight, whether it's climate change or whether it's health or whether it's general environment, I think the sentiment is the same. We're sitting in a gym. We're gathered here tonight listening to each other, trying to think about a course that for most of us is immediate. It's the next few years, the rest of our lives. And in fact, it's not about that.
My name is Joseph Prush. I live at 1377 Enfield Road. And before I say any more, I just want to say thank you all for having this. Looking around our country today, it's a little scary to see how little voice the average citizen has. And it's good to see a responsible local government stepping up to the challenge and inviting us here to have this opportunity. I really thank you for that. So I'll start by saying that our country was founded in 1776 by men who had had their lives and their liberty and their way of life attacked by a government that was out of control. What I hear around me is a bunch of neighbors who are coming to you saying they are feeling like their government, their state government and their federal government, has let them down. It is out of control, and it is in the pockets of people who have a lot of money. Cuomo does not have the willpower to regulate hydrofracking, and we can see it in every single step he's made and every speech he's said. He's not willing to protect us from the threats to our lives. He's not willing to put any sort of money into medical care for those who are going to get cancer from this. He's not willing to pay money to those of us who are going to see our property values fall by 75%. You know, what's going to happen to those of you who have your drilling leases when all your neighbors have to leave because they don't want to see their kids coming down with reproductive disorders? You know, it's crazy to even think about this. So we've got all these threats to our lives. We talked about livelihood, threats to people's businesses, to farming in this area. Do we want to be a farming community, or do we want to be a drilling community? The gas companies have promised that this drilling is going to create jobs. Sure, it'll create jobs. But what we've seen from other places where they've done this drilling, whether it's Wyoming or Pennsylvania or Nigeria or Mexico or Southeast Asia where they've done gas drilling, they hire people from outside. Less than 10% of the jobs that will come into this community will be from people in this community. Most of the jobs for people who are going to work are going to be people who are experts, who've done this in Texas, who've done this in Wyoming, who've done this in Pennsylvania, and they're going to come here, and we're still not going to have jobs. So we're talking about a threat to our lives. We've talked about health. We've talked about threats to our liberty, our freedom to choose what we want to do with our lives and with the money that we've invested in our property. And finally, the pursuit of happiness. Pursuit of happiness was put at the end for a particular reason, because life and liberty are more important than money. So these gas people who want their money and are telling us that we're going to make a profit, that's not true, and it's not more important than our lives, and it's not more important than our liberty. So I appreciate that there's a moratorium being considered, but it's kind of like there's a serial killer on the loose. Let's have a moratorium on murder. We've got to do something far bolder. There needs to be a ban. It's un-American. This is our way of life. Thank you.